I can go with the flow. I appreciate you inviting me, Dan, and thanks for being a part of this panel tonight. My name is Bobby Graves. I live in Starkville, Mississippi. I was born and raised in the Jackson, Mississippi area, and for about the past 12, almost 13 years, I've been living in Brandon, which is a little town just east of the capital city of Jackson. And the reason we moved up to Starkville is during the pandemic last year, around May, our youngest daughter, who lives here in town, let us know where we're going to be first-time grandparents. So grandma wanted to be up close to the baby, so did I. And we started looking into the idea of moving up here. And sure enough, we found a place. And the first day we had our house on the market, it sold 5 times at full price. So I said, evidently, it's meant for us to move up here. And we got up here in July of last year and have been enjoying it ever since. And got to welcome our grandson into the world on December the 22nd. And it's been fantastic being up here. Let's see if I can find my PowerPoint here. And there we go. What I need to do is, I forgot to put it on screen share, get back on. I'm still new to the Zoom here, so please forgive me.
You're fine, you're fine.
Here we go. There we go.
Yep.
Everybody seeing my screen there?
Yes, sir. You're on.
Fantastic. I learned how to use PowerPoint with all my presenter notes so nobody else sees them, but I just see the screen. So that's great. I gotta get my buttons here to work. There we go. There we go. All right. Well, the Hurricane Washington was formed back in 1965 when Hurricane Betsy was active. And it was formed by Jerry Murphy, KB5HAV, who's a resident of the Cleveland, Ohio area. But back then, he was stationed in Rhode Island when he was in the Navy. He was part of the construction battalion, or also known as Navy Seabees. And he was, on this particular day, he was working on the Intercontinental Amateur Radio Traffic Net, which back in those days operated on 14.320. Nowadays, they operate on 14.300 in the morning times. But there was a lot of people asking about this storm named Betsy. And it was so much that the normal routine of the net was sort of being disrupted. So Jerry asked the net manager if he can move everybody up to 14.325, and he'd do his best to help everybody with that. So they did. And I forgot the name of the lady, but it was a lady down in Panama that went up on frequency with them. And between the two of them, they started the exchange of weather data that was coming from the National Hurricane Center to those that were looking for it. And then they thought, well, let's try to do this. Let's get some weather reports. And they found a station in the Miami area who was able to take those reports and forward them directly on into the National Hurricane Center. And that was basically how the Hurricane Washington got started. Of course, Betsy eventually went through the Bahamas, went through the southern tip of Florida, and then slammed on into southeast Louisiana. And the damage caused by that one storm was the first time a storm had caused over $1 billion in damage. And that earned the storm the nickname $1 Billion Betsy. The storm, Hurricane Washington quickly gained a formal and direct working relationship with the National Hurricane Center in Miami. When I made my first trip to the National Hurricane Conference in 2014, I quickly learned that there was a Canadian Hurricane Center. I'm not sure how many people knew there was one, but that was the first time I knew of it. And a gentleman was there giving a presentation about it, was Bob Robichaud, VE1MBR. Before the day was over with, I met him and we got to talking and agreed that, yeah, it would be a great idea for us to work together. So when I left, we had a formal direct working relationship with the Canadian Hurricane Center. Not knowing within a few months we'd be working Hurricane Arthur that hit the Outer Banks of North Carolina and then went straight on up to, guess what? Halifax, Nova Scotia, right where the Canadian Hurricane Center is. And we've been active for every Atlantic Basin hurricane since the formation of the net, as well as a number of tropical storms. That was primarily because they were forecast to become a hurricane prior to landfall. And we've even worked a few stations in the Eastern Pacific as well. Last time we worked a storm in the Eastern Pacific was 2003. The reason that was the last one is because we just wasn't hearing from anybody. And we're working on seeing what we can do to get people interested in getting on the air to help the exchange of weather data whenever an Eastern Pacific storm threatens land. Unlike most operations like Skywarn programs or whatever you can think of that are located in one central location, well, we're scattered across a big area. So, we're about 50 members covering 20 U.S. states, about 7 countries. That includes Venezuela, Aruba, Honduras, Puerto Rico, Bermuda, and Canada. We have some members who have been with us at least 20 years. And when the oldest member we have is our founder, Jerry Murphy, KYUW, been with us all 56 years. We've got about 8 members on the net that are fully bilingual. That comes in very handy for some of our Spanish speakers. They may be bilingual, but they're more comfortable speaking Spanish. So being able to have somebody can speak their language is definitely enhanced our operations. And right now, as you can see on our map, we definitely are looking for folks that are in the Midwest and the western half of the U.S. It can help us, especially on 20 meters when propagation starts changing and it's better from west to east than it is during the middle of the day, or morning time and midday. The mission of the Hurricane WatchNet is to, like your local Skywarn program, disseminate hurricane advisory information. We read bulletins on there, and mainly for to get out to the Caribbean islands, mariners. A lot of people say, well, you know, the Hurricane WatchNet's outdated. Why do y'all do that? Well, yeah, there is a lot of information you get on your cell phone and internet, but in areas where the storm is getting ready to be affected, in some cases they shut the power off to the island. Maybe not in all cases, but depending on how big the storm is expected to be. And even if the storm is hitting, and when they lose internet, well, they have no way of knowing what the storm is doing. And over the years, I've received a lot of email from the islands saying, thank you. We've been listening to you on shortwave radio. And thank you for reading the bulletins. It lets us know where the storm is. We even taken the coordinates and put it on tracking maps to see where the storm is headed. Also, we're there to obtain ground truth weather data. In this high-tech age we're living in, there again, you may ask, well, why? You know, we've got the satellites that are giving us fantastic high-resolution data. But keep in mind, those satellites are orbiting the Earth at 23,000 plus miles above the surface, trying to figure out what's happening at the surface. Doppler radar's doing fantastic. A lot of new software packages to give a lot more detail, but just scanning the atmosphere, trying to figure out what's happening at the surface. Yeah, we have a lot of other ground stations, weather stations giving good data. But when the storm comes in, it starts knocking off the internet, knocking the machines out. Well, we have no way of knowing what the storm is. So when we have people that are in the affected area close by that can give us over the air, let us know what the storm is doing, that's the key that the forecasters are looking for. They're looking for that data. They love data. And it may be that the one piece of data that you have is what they're looking for to verify what the storm is doing. He may let them know, hey, this storm is making a little bit turn to a different direction. We may need to extend warnings in another location due to the way the storm is doing. They may need to adjust the storm surge forecast. So all your reports are very vital. Also, to relay the initial damage assessment back not only to the forecasters, I can verify what the storm may or may not be doing, but also there is a FEMA office inside the National Hurricane Center. And they grab that data and they help them to start preparing for humanitarian aid and other services once the storm has passed, especially for U.S. landfalling storms. We function as a backup communications link, not only for the National Hurricane Center, the Canadian Hurricane Center, but also for National Weather Service forecast offices. We've done so back in 1980 when Hurricane Island hit Brownsville, Texas, during Katrina back in 2005 when the weather station at Slidell went off the air. And we were prepared to do the same thing with Lake Charles when they lost their Doppler radar site during Laura last season. And we're also there for emergency operations centers, storm shelters. And also we've been working quite closely with our military to help with humanitarian aid before the storm has arrived, during, and even after the storm. From time to time, we do get a chance to talk to the famed hurricane hunters from the United States Air Force and the NOAA hurricane hunters. They either go to the storm or coming back from the storm, but never while they're trying to penetrate the eye of the storm. Unfortunately, we hadn't heard them in the past few years, but in the early 2000s, got a chance to talk to at least one of the NOAA hurricane hunters quite often. And I think he finally retired in the late 2000s. So I think he's now living in Alaska now. Our net activation policy is generally whenever a hurricane is within 300 miles of landfall. Now, this could vary due to the forward speed and or intensity of the storm. I'll hit a little bit stronger on this a little bit later. But we'll use Hurricane Matthew, like back in 2016. That was a big Category 5 hurricane just sitting off the coast of Nicaragua and Colombia and just south of Haiti. But it was just sitting there spinning. It was definitely well within 300 miles of landfall, but no need to activate because it was just not really affecting anyone. It was causing some big swells on the Nicaragua and Colombian coast, but that was about it. Maybe some rain, a little bit of rain. But when the storm finally turned, then we went into full action, and we stayed in continuous operation until the storm was no longer a threat. We weren't expecting it to be active for 6 days, though, but more on that coming. When we do activate, you'll find us on the frequencies of 14.325 during the daytime. Since I became net manager back in 2013, I made us a 24-hour net, and we'll operate on 7268 at nighttime. And come around 7:30 a.m. Eastern, we'll shut down, and that's to let the so that the waterway net can hold their daily net. And if we need to, once they finish, then we'll resume operations. A couple of years ago during Dorian, when that storm was sitting there over the Bahamas as a Category 5, we just worked together and kept getting in data as best we could from the affected area. And our coverage area is the entire Caribbean, including the coastal areas of Central America, Eastern Mexico, Eastern Canada, and the East and Gulf Coast states of the United States. Whenever there is a system active, we do get out the latest advisories on the networks of 14300. That does include the Maritime Mobile Service Network. At the bottom of each hour, Maritime Net, they are getting out weather data for mariners and shortwave listeners as to not only active storms for the tropics, but other storms that could affect or weather system that could affect mariners wherever they may be at. And of course, at the request of any mariner with what they need. But when we do need to activate, we'll always notify the daily users of especially the nets that we know of on 14.325 as well as 7268. We also, of course, notify the Maritime Mobile Service Net so they can notify them to where to find us. We work closely with the American Radio Relay League through their outlets. They're able to reach literally thousands of amateur radio operators through their email listings. Been working with the what was known as the International Boat Watch Net. They're now known as the Boat Watch Net. And they have a means of talking to many mariners, whether they're licensed hams or not. They may be commercial fishermen or just big commercial vessels, but they'll sometimes come in and listen to us. If they are licensed hams, we'd love to get their weather data. And of course, during emergencies, yes, we can talk to them even if they're non-licensed. Since 2015, we've been working very closely with the U.S. Army Mars and Air Force Mars. Also, the Salvation Army Team Emergency Radio Network and FEMA. And of course, we also alert numerous amateur radio outlets of our plans to activate when we need to. We give updates as far as how the storm's doing and what our plans are when it looks like we can shut down. And of course, when we do shut down, notify them again on that. We do work very closely with the amateur radio station there at the Hurricane Center, which is WX4NHC. Have a great working relationship with them. When we first operated in 65, there was no means of getting weather data in except, calling it in or sending it in via fax. But when they got on the air back in 1980, that just made our operations much smoother and be able to get information in and out of the Hurricane Center much quicker. And if you didn't know, our director of the National Hurricane Center is Kenneth Graham. I didn't realize until about a week ago that Ken Graham is a alumni of Mississippi State University. And of course, most people do know that he is a licensed ham, has a call sign WX4KEG. If you didn't notice already, I'm very passionate about what we do, and I think everyone here tonight is very passionate about what they do in amateur radio or whatever aspect of life that you have doing, whether it's some type of sport or various hobby. But why are we, the Hurricane Watchnet, so passionate about what we do? Well, over the course of about the past 56 seasons, we have witnessed the destructive power of Mother Nature, and we're to try to help save lives. You see, we've seen the power of storm surge, such as what Hurricane Ivan did back in 2004. That was a big monster storm that came through across Grand Cayman Island, just leveled the area, and came through the Gulf of Mexico and hit Gulf Shores, Alabama. But the storm surge was so strong on the eastern side. This was what led to the I-10 bridge in Pensacola, Florida. Just totally destroyed it. They rebuilt it. It's a lot higher off the water, and it's a 3-lane on both sides instead of where this is just 2-lane. My big question is, why is there an 18-wheeler or what's left of one on a bridge during a Category 4 hurricane? I can tell you that the Coast Guard did find the driver at the bottom of the bay, and it was heartbreaking to find that out. We've also seen what storm surge can do most recently, like in 2012 when Sandy hit New Jersey and New York. It was considered a post-tropical cyclone, but all reality, it was still a strong Category 1 hurricane. We've seen what a Category 4 hurricane can do, along with storm surge and 100-mile-per-hour plus winds. This is what was left of just one scene of Gulfport, Mississippi. We all seen the videos of what it did to New Orleans, but you never seen too much in the news media what it did to Mississippi. I mean, it just leveled everything. We also seen what a Category 5 can do. This is what happened in Homestead, Florida back in 92, when what was at the time the last Cat 5 to hit the U.S., but we had another Cat 5 hit us recently. That was in 18 when Hurricane Michael hit Mexico Beach, Florida, which is just east of Panama City. A lot of folks might think, well, this is just a tropical storm. I don't have nothing to worry about here. That's just a big thunderstorm. Well, tell that to the people of Houston, Texas. This storm hit June 5th of 01. It dropped over 40 inches of rain. Unfortunately, 41 people died. 30,000 become homeless when the storms affected over 70,000 homes, 2,700 which were just totally destroyed. Downtown Houston was inundated with flooding, causing hospitals and businesses to be put out of business or receiving a ton of damage. And all total, let's see, I can't see my screen here. Anyway, it was I can't see what the amount of damage was, but it was a huge amount of damage. We've been very fortunate, especially with one of the last big storms to hit the U.S., which was Harvey, when that big storm just dumped a ton of rain in the Houston area. But a lot of folks were just very thankful that none of the infrastructure, such as cell towers, didn't get affected. We didn't have the kind of luck during Michael. A lot of cell towers went down when it happened. Phone coverage was out. Internet coverage, like on your cell phone, was out. But if you notice on the map on the screen here, this is a shot of a cell tower in Panama City, Florida, west of where the eye went in. Usually the strongest winds are on the eastern side of a storm that's heading northward. And this was the case going across Panama City on into Mexico Beach. And they were without phone coverage in that area on cells for many months. So you may ask, well, am I safe inland? Let's say in the middle of the United States. Let's take a look at what Hugo did back in 1989. This was a Cat 4 storm that hit the Charleston, South Carolina area. It remained a hurricane all the way through South Carolina into the Blue Ridge Mountains of North Carolina, weakened down to a tropical storm as it traversed the western part of Virginia, West Virginia, on up into eastern Ohio, before clipping in the northwestern corner of Pennsylvania on into the Great Lakes. That storm caused flooding all the way. So memorable storms we've seen over the years, of course, it's a huge list, and it depends on where it was at. It could be even a Cat 2 where you're at. That would be memorable for you. But we've got a lot of Cat 5s, not only for the U.S., but in other areas that hit, some Cat 4s, some Cat 3s. 2017 was quite memorable for me because we worked not one, not two, but 3 hurricanes at one time. We had Irma hitting Puerto Rico. We had Katia hitting Veracruz, Mexico. Then we had Jose coming back, hitting the same spot that Irma hit just a few days earlier, which was Barbuda. Thankfully, there was nobody on the island of Barbuda because the survivors of that storm were picked up and carried to another location for safety. And afterwards, that was the first time that Barbuda was totally uninhabited in over 300 years. Now, here it is. It seemed like over the past 10 or plus years, it seemed like we've been in a solar minimum. During a solar maximum, like you see on the left side of the screen, the sun is peppered with spots. That's good news for us ham operators because it means solar flares. When the solar flare dies down, we've got some good propagation. Solar minimum, no flares, propagation is horrible. But while we're trying to work Hurricane Irma coming towards Puerto Rico, all of a sudden there's this huge solar flare or sunspot that comes into view. All of a sudden, we heard this crackling noise on the air and it's total silence. Couldn't hear nobody for about 4 hours. Then it finally cleared on up and we could hear, start hearing people again. What happened was a huge solar flare. It was the largest in about a decade. It unleashed what they called a Class X 9.3 flare. A couple of days later, it unleashed another strong flare, Class 8.2, I believe it was. That solar blackout lasted about a couple of hours. Well, what do you mean blackout? Well, everything you see in red, total HF communications blackout. You can't hear anything. Then nobody's going to hear you. When it starts fading out to other colors, the band's sort of clearing up. What's in black, it's either darkness or else just good, decent band conditions. But we dealt with that twice during Irma, and it was very heartbreaking knowing that there's people could possibly calling for help, and we can't hear them. But thankfully, it didn't last that long, except for 4 hours. One of the most memorable storms of the 20th century, at least for members of the Hurricane Washington who have been with us at least 20 years or more, would have to be that of Hurricane Mitch back in 1998. This was at one time a strong Category 5 hurricane. But just before it made landfall, it weakened to a Category 1 storm. Okay, that's good news at that point. The only problem was it drifted inland and dropped over 75 inches of rain. The resulting mudslides and flash floods was just absolutely horrendous. We had, there we go. That works good like that. One of our net members at the time, Bob Bodick at KB5HAV, he's a silent key now, but at the time he was an Austin native. And he once wrote a memoir of some of his memories of Hurricane Mitch. He said he remembered talking to a group of pleasure boats, about 70 boats. They are anchored in the Rio Dulce River, so they would tune in every night to get the latest update on the storm. They told me, he said, we waited every night. They remember talking to a guy that was on his roof using a wire antenna and a car battery. He was talking about the waters passing by the house and the cow carcasses floating by. You see, in Honduras alone, Mitch killed more than 11,000 people. That's 1,000. Some estimates put it as high as 18,000. That's just from the flooding in Honduras. That's not including the thousands that died in Nicaragua and Guatemala. Mitch remains the second deadliest hurricane in Atlantic history. Some of the most memorable, what's the most memorable storm, since, at least for me, since 2013? Well, that would have to be Hurricane Matthew. Matthew was the first Category 5 hurricane to form in the Atlantic basin since Felix back in 2007, which made landfall in Nicaragua. This storm here just set off the coast of Nicaragua and Colombia, as I was talking about earlier, and it just grew into a big monster storm and did finally hit the western part of Haiti, and then went across eastern Cuba, throughout the Bahamas, and right on up the U.S. coastline. This is just one shot of a before and after of just a little town called Jeremy, which is on the north corner of the little peninsula going out from Haiti on the southwest side of the country. You can see the before and after is just devastating. Flooding, just cutting areas just totally off from everybody. I talked quite a bit to Jean Robert, HH5JR, and he was telling me about the damage during the storm, and even doing reconnaissance afterwards, what the storm did. And it was just heartbreaking. You see, what happened was back in 2010, this was sort of insult to injury to them there. If you remember, there was a huge earthquake that hit Haiti back in 2010. Well, one of the UN workers that come in to help with humanitarian aid, unfortunately, introduced cholera to the country, and it started running rampant throughout the entire place. Well, having this big storm bringing flash floods and mudslides to the country did not help none. It just made it spread worse. And even after the storm hit, I was getting reports from Jean Robert, and he was telling me about, coming in from the orphanage. Well, we had 5 people died a day. We had 12 people died a day. And it's all I could do to keep from crying on the air. And one time I had to ask somebody else to take over the net in our chat room we use. And it was tough. But before the storm hit, I received a call from one of the heads of U.S. Army Mars. He said, this is a directive handed down to him from within inside the Department of Defense, the Pentagon. He said, we've been requested to ask you if you can help us out. Any reports that you get out of Haiti, no matter how big or small it is, or even if you think it's relative or not, please let us know. We're trying to get some help. We know it's a tough situation there. Well, the day that the storm, or after the storm had left and actually was coming off the coast of Cuba, he gave me a call back, said, Bobby, thank you so much to you and your team with the Hurricane Watch Net. The information you give us has been so vital. It's been so vital that we've been able to release 3 Navy ships heading there with help. They have the water, means to make water, food, medicine, medical supplies, boots on the ground. He said, these aren't just little ships either. It says aircraft carrier USS George Washington, the USS Mesa Verde, and the USS Iwo Jima. And yes, that is the same Iwo Jima that picked up the Gemini and Apollo astronauts. Months later, I received a certificate in the mail, and I was humbled by that. And thanking the Hurricane Watch Net for our contributions during Matthew. But Matthew was an interesting storm. Like I said, we were active for 6 total days, actually a little bit more than 6 days. And it's a funny thing how Mother Nature is. She likes to repeat herself from time to time. Dorian, back in 2019, after he got off of Grand Bahama, I'm sorry. After he got off of Grand Bahama after sitting there as a Category 5 storm for 36 hours, took almost the same track as Matthew did going up the U.S. East Coast. Except Matthew, once he got to North Carolina, did turn out to sea, whereas Dorian went on up into Nova Scotia. Now, I've been asked over the years, why did I keep the net operating even though the storm is offshore? Well, keep in mind, these were Cat 2, Cat 1 storms, and with Dorian was a Cat 3 when it started to turn and go north. But the thing was, they were like 50 and 75 miles offshore. Okay. Thank goodness they didn't make landfall here in the U.S. So Matthew got close and brushed, I think, the Outer Banks, and even Dorian did as well. It did dump a lot of rain on shore, brought a lot of high winds on shore. But I felt like I was caught in a catch-22, because if we shut the net down and all of a sudden the storm turned westward and hit inland, then it would have me and the Hurricane Watch Net looking like a bunch of idiots. People would be asking, y'all supposed to be the Hurricane Watch Net. Why weren't you there? So I would rather put the net down and the storm not do anything or make landfall than to shut it down, and then we look bad. So when is hurricane season? Well, for the Eastern Pacific, it's May 15th through November 30th. For the Atlantic, it's June 1st through November 30th. However, Mother Nature, she could care less about what the calendar says. Over the years, it's been recorded that tropical cyclones have formed in every single of the year. Again, she don't care. She does what she wants to. However, there is a peak to the season. It's usually around the middle part of September. However, it seems like some of our strongest storms have come either late August and in the early part of October. From 2006 to 2013 was sort of interesting. If you notice there's been 2 times on this time period that we didn't have any landfall in hurricanes. There's only one other time that happened, and that was in the 80s. I'll have to go back and check the records. I can't remember exactly what year that was, but it's very rare to go through a season without any landfall in hurricanes. We did have a couple of years where it got really busy. That was 08 and 10, where we had 6 hurricanes. But from 20, we have been busy. We've activated the net 26 times for 28 hurricanes and 1 tropical storm. That 1 tropical storm was Gordon. It was expected to become a hurricane prior to landfall. It just didn't ever get there. And we have worked 12 major hurricanes, and they were some big ones. Poor folks in Bermuda, I think they were beginning for a while wondering, what did they do? Because 2014, they got hit by Gonzalo. 2015, they got hit by Joaquin. They went through the Bahamas, and it actually brushed past Bermuda. Then 2016, they had Hurricane Nicole go by them. But it was a really amazing year last year. The tough one was Joaquin when it went through the Bahamas. When it was going across, I'm trying to remember the name of the area there, Crooked Island. We heard this noise on the frequency. It sounded a lot like Pactor. And I got to meet, I wasn't the only one who noticed it. There was quite a few others who noticed it as well. And we were trying to figure out what's going on there. And about a day later, we discovered there was a big motor vessel called the El Faro that had sunk there in about 15,000 feet of water, killing 33 people on board. And to this day, I always wonder, were they sending out a distress call using Pactor? I don't know. That one sort of haunts me at times. And over the past 14 years, our entire group, we've logged over 9,000 man-hours of volunteer labor. For Matthew and Dorian, we logged over 1,300 hours apiece on those storms. Last year, we had 10 landfalling storms here in the United States. 6 of those were hurricanes. The strongest of those was Laura. And I've seen a lot of reports come out on the advisories, but none that caught my attention like this one did. Unsurvivable storm surge. That one happened a number of times. And the reason was they were expecting the storm to move inland as far as 40 miles with the storm surge, with depths as high as 15 to 20 feet. The storm surge was quite bad. There was a lot of wind damage there, but that one caught my attention. Hopefully we'll never see that again. Laura did cause over $19 billion of damage. Unfortunately, 77 people did lose their lives, 63 coming out of Haiti, making it the 16th costliest hurricane on record. And of course, even more, there was a long list of storms we had last year. And if you notice, the last ones are going into the Greek alphabet. You'll be happy to know the Hurricane Center will never use the Greek alphabet again, because there's a lot of confusion when they get. A lot of folks thought when we got to Zeta, okay, that's the end of that alphabet. What's the next one? Well, the Greek alphabet is totally different from what we've been using. So if we ever run out of the storm names that are already assigned for a given year, the Hurricane Center will come out with a secondary list of storm names to use. Comparing 2005 to 2020, Like I say, sometimes Mother Nature likes to repeat herself. Going down the line is pretty much close, with the exception of the bottom two lines. Now, however, when it comes to fatalities, one is always too many. But let's face it, folks, we were lucky. Things could have been much worse than it was last year when you look at the total damage and that of the lives lost. So you may be asking, well, how do I prepare for a tropical cyclone? Well, if you heard Dr. Rick Knabb answer this, he said, I get asked this quite often, so like in 10 seconds, what's the best way I can prepare for a hurricane? He said, well, it's easy. Evacuation, supplies, insurance, strengthen your home. So let's look at some of these. Evacuation. If you do live in a hurricane-prone area, find out what your evacuation routes are. Learn them, and in case you need to go, you'll know where they are and follow those routes. If the evacuation call does go out, please don't wait to the last minute, because in most cases, the state will have the highway set up in what they call contraflow, meaning all lanes go in the same direction. And if it does happen, please be patient, because everybody, including yourself, are trying to get to the same place safely. If you start seeing a lane open up and think, well, hey, I can jump in that lane. Well, guess what? You just opened up a spot for somebody to start jumping over. When everybody starts all this lane hopping, well, that creates wrecks. Well, when a wreck happens, it just slowed everybody up. So just be patient, and everybody will get there safely. If you're not comfortable trying to go those evacuation routes, most cities have a hurricane shelter. Find out where they're at, and check ahead of time. In this day and age of COVID, they may have certain restrictions, certain guidelines to go by. You'll want to check that ahead of time to know what those are. Everybody needs a emergency family plan. So in case you need to evacuate, you know what to carry with you, such as cash. You may think, well, hey, I don't have to worry about that. I've got a credit card. Well, if the winds are bad, are you trying to maybe get back home after a storm? May not be any electricity. With no electricity, those cash registers use your credit card, they're not going to work. You want to keep copies of your insurance policy, some of your medical records, some prescriptions. If you do need to evacuate, if you have a prescription need to be refrigerated, you need to have a way to keep those taken care of. Stay informed, not only with your local news media, whether it be TV or radio, but if you happen to be out, you can listen in on HF radio. 14300 for the Maritime Mobile Service Net. Like I said, we get out weather data, especially during hurricane season, at the bottom of the hour. And log into our website, hwn.org. If there's any active storms, you'll find at the top center of the list. We list them for both the Atlantic, Eastern Pacific, and Central Pacific. You can also sign up to receive our tropical email. It's a free subscription with one since started it up. You'll get the tropical weather outlook that's posted 4 times daily. And if there's any active storms, you'll get advisories on those 4 times daily. And if the storm is threatening land, there will be an intermediate advisory come up between those. Also, we've got our presence on social media, including Facebook. Do have a YouTube channel. I was hoping to start having some programming on it, but past couple of years, life has just gotten in the way. But looking towards going full bore on getting some programs on our YouTube channel. And we also have some downloads toward the bottom of our homepage where you can get the download family plan as well as an emergency supply checklist. What I mean by a emergency supply kit? Well, food and water, batteries and flashlights. You may see that bottom one, local maps. You may well think, well, hey, I don't need a local map. I've got them on my cell phone. And besides, I know my local area. I don't need to have to worry about that. But you remember those images of Mexico Beach, Florida, and Homestead, Florida, after a big Category 5 hurricane, maybe even a Cat 4? You may not recognize your neighborhood because all your landmarks are gone. But if you can find one point of reference using a map, a paper map, you'll be able to get to where you're trying to go to. You may think, well, I've got my cell phone. You remember those cell towers I showed you folded over with no power? If they're down, those maps on your cell phone are no good. So have an alternate means of knowing where you of maps. Make sure your home is properly insured. If you live in a flood zone, make sure you have flood insurance. But be advised, unless things have changed, if you buy flood insurance today, it doesn't go into effect till 90 days later. You may want to double check with your insurance agent on that if you do live in a flood zone area. Strengthen your home. You may want to check with the local building codes and inspectors. They could possibly help you out and make sure your home is up to code. There may be some grants around to help you bring your home up to make it more easy to withstand some of these tropical storms and hurricanes. Also, test and understand your backup equipment, especially with your generator. And please, don't use it indoors. Wait till the storm has passed and use it outdoors. There's been a number of people over the years that's been, unfortunately, have passed away due to carbon monoxide poisoning because they ran the generator indoors. Also, if your fuel you use on these things, you may want to use a fuel stabilizer. Better yet, if it's available in your area, get non-ethanol gas. Thankfully, we have it in our area. It costs a lot more, but these small engines, they do not like ethanol. To get more information on why they don't, check with your local dealer or repairman, and they can explain it to you. But they just don't like it. If you can start from the beginning, using non-ethanol gas, you'll find these engines last a lot longer. Deep cycle marine batteries are great for emergency power. Most HF rigs do run on 12 volts, even if they are set up to run off of AC. Even like my Yaesu FT 2000 does, I can unplug the internal power supply and hook it up to a 12-volt battery and run it off of that. Most computer UPSs do run with small 12-volt sealed lead acid batteries. They make good little small portable batteries. They start around $50. And if you're trying to charge any of these with a solar panel, always be sure to use a charge controller. Without it, you could easily overheat your battery and possibly cause it to explode. And you never want that to happen. I had a buddy of mine years ago he was in a car wreck and the battery on him, his car exploded and the acid got in his eyes and made him permanently blind. Backup antennas. What can you say about a wire dipole? They're easily to be made, stored away, and hung up really quick. A good antenna for emergency backup that you can put up in your attic is getting a couple of ham sticks and getting a couple of mobile mirror mount antenna brackets and putting them together. You'll have to make a minor modification, but there's information on that. And of course, even after the storm, you may not have anything to hook them up to, but 20 meter, or even 40 or 80 meter dipole set, or even a loop set up 10 or 15 feet off the ground works good as an NVIS antenna. Personal weather stations. These are getting to be more popular. You can find them just about anywhere, starting around $100 on up to however much you're willing to pay. But just keep in mind, there are some guidelines on setting them up. As say, like not only for the temperature sensors, like 4 to 6 feet above the ground, but keep it away from asphalt or anything that radiates heat. Otherwise, the temperature sensor is going to be useless to you. But for our purposes, what we're most interested in is wind speed, wind direction, wind gust. And that is for the anemometer. Where's the best place to put it? Well, it's about 30 feet above the ground, away from any objects. In other words, houses, buildings, trees, what have you. However, you may not be able to do that due to homeowners associations, or it may be just the physical limits of your property. Let's just quickly go over a few items here of some right ways and wrong ways. Here we see a all-in-one personal weather station mounted to the end of a roof. Let me say that's not going to work. And you may ask, okay, why? Well, there's something known as the Venturi Effect. When wind hits a pitched surface, such as a roof, that wind wants to speed up and get over that roof. The same principle works on airplane wings. It's reason why it's curved on the top and sort of flat under the bottom. When the wind starts going over the top of that wing, it starts creating a high pressure area and a low pressure under the bottom of the wing that creates a lift. When that wind's speeding up over your roof, well, the anemometer, the wind speed is going to be much higher than what it should be. And then the indicator, as far as the direction, who knows where it's pointed at. Also in this indication here, illustration, we've got another problem. Two buildings close together. If the wind's trying to blow between those buildings, it's like taking, trying to blow air on your hand and then blow the same amount of air through a straw on your hand. It speeds up in that straw. Well, it's doing the same thing through those two buildings. So it's going to create a vortex, give you false readings on that wind speed indicator. Okay, you may think, well, okay, let me mount it closer to the ground. This might work. Not really. It may work good for checking for rainfall, but for wind, well, the wind speed indicator, an anemometer is being blocked by this fence as well as the outbuilding over the left-hand side. So that's not going to work. So for an all-in-one, it's recommended anywhere between 8 to 10 feet above the ground, still away from buildings and trees, and you'll get much better results doing that. If you don't have an anemometer and you'd like to still be able to judge what the wind speed is, on our webpage on the left side navigation bar, we have a link called Beaufort Windscale. And this has been used for many, many years. You can judge by how the trees are blowing, and maybe if it's beginning to break ice, well, hey, the winds have got to be at least this speed, and it comes in quite handy. It's pretty accurate, so you may want to have a copy of that available. So what do we need when we do activate for the hurricane app? Well, basically, kind of like with your local Skywarn program, we need to know who you are, where you're located at, and if the information you're given to us is measured or estimated. We always prefer measured, but we'll definitely always take estimated data. Of course, we also, like I say, need wind speed, wind gust, and wind direction. And if you are using an anemometer, let us know the height and location of that. Because when we don't get it, the forecaster is going to say, ask us, where's it at? So they can make whatever adjustments they need to do to get the actual close to accurate representation of what they're looking for. If you do have a barometer, let us know what barometer's doing, either rising or falling or staying steady, and what measurement you're using, whether it's millibars or inches of mercury or even millimeters of mercury. And also when the last time it was calibrated. Rainfall amount, how much over X amount of time. And if you're able to do so safely, storm surge and storm damage. This information is quite useful for not only for the forecasters in the Hurricane Center, but also for FEMA. The forecast for this season is not looking too good. No, a month ago, updated their average of storms, going on the average of storms from going from 91 to 2000, average amount to 14 named storms, 7 hurricanes, with 3 of those becoming Category 3 or stronger hurricanes. May 20th, NOAA gave out their first forecast for the season, calling from 13 to 20 named storms, 6 to 10 of those becoming hurricanes, with 3 to 5 of those becoming major hurricanes. Dr. Philip Glocksback at Colorado State University, who took over from Dr. Bill Gray, he was his Phil was his protege, and he's calling, as of today, made an update to 18 named storms with 8 hurricanes and 4 of those becoming Category 3 or stronger hurricanes. The asterisk meaning that there's already been 1 tropical storm this year. That was Anna back in the month of May. So how bad can a season be? 1 landfalling hurricane is all it takes. Case in point, Hurricane Andrew back in 1992. We don't need no more like that. Don't need no more like Matthew. We don't need no more like Laura. But we still need to be prepared, because we could have another season like I always said, it could be 2005 again. We had 27 named storms, 1 unnamed storm. But then Mother Nature has to repeat herself. So we had 2020 with 30 named storms and 1 tropical depression, an unnamed storm. But when it comes to Mother Nature and hurricane preparedness, never let your guard down. These storms can do tricks on you. This is the track of Hurricane Betsy back in '65. This thing come across the Windward and Leeward Islands. Looked like it was going to go out in the middle of the Atlantic, but then it took a left, looked like it was going to go towards Bahamas. Then it started turning a little bit more toward the north, looked like it was going to go to the Carolinas. It said, no, storm turned backwards and went down towards the Bahamas, south end of Florida, then into southeast Louisiana. Let's jump ahead to 1985. This is Hurricane Elena. That storm came across Cuba, got in the middle of the Gulf of Mexico, Then it made a right hook look like it was going straight towards or close to Tampa, Florida. And all of a sudden, the storm made a 180-degree turn, came back and hit Gulfport, Mississippi as a Category 3 hurricane. So the bottom line is, when it comes to preparedness and hurricanes, always stay informed. The time to be prepared is now, and definitely never drop your guard. Hurricane preparedness is all about safety, what we're here to do, and I hope I've been able to and give a little bit about what we do with the Hurricane WatchNet. I could spend a lot of time on some of the storms from last year if I did, but I've been here all night long, so I thought we'd just try it this way. Any questions?
I get this thing going here. Hi there. I'm going to drop your, you dropped your stuff. So let me, where are you? You're up there someplace. There you are. Remove spotlight.
Bobby, you.
There you are. Okay, go ahead, Oscar.
I'm raising my hand. Bobby, to cover the different regions, how many stations you have available, or and how you work those stations? I mean, those are fixed people, or they are volunteers, and where they are located?
We have about, excuse me a second. Yeah, we have about 50 members with Hurricane Net, and they're scattered across about 18 states here in the U.S. And then we have 3 stations in Puerto Rico, one in Cuba, Venezuela, got a couple up in Canada, and then also one in Honduras. We have 8 members who are Spanish speaking. When we do activate, we have at least on average around 5 to sometimes 10 people active at any given time to be able to help. There's usually 2 or 3 on the air, quite a bit more in our chat room that we use, and they're usually listening in as well, and we can swap back and forth. And then there's also a lot of folks that are listening in and willing to help with relays that we may not happen to hear. So there's always a lot of people on the air, and it's about, I hope I answered that question for you.
So, and then it is tied together. So you got about 50 volunteers working, and where they are located, or you switch them as necessary to cover the different important regions. I mean, depends on the activity, I would guess.
It depends on where the storm is at, and of course, now 40 meters, we've got pretty good coverage from just about anybody wherever. 20 meters, way propagation goes. In the morning time, we may have stations that may hear, say, like if there's a storm hitting Puerto Rico, say, for instance. In the morning time, our Eastern Canada stations and those in the northeastern part of the U.S. may happen to hear Puerto Rico. Then as the day goes, then it starts moving down toward the central states. And then in the afternoon, they may start stretching out long where we have people out on the West Coast are able to hear Puerto Rico or in the Caribbean a little bit better. And then, of course, when we move even the time, then just about anybody we have on there, wherever they're located, are able to hear just about whatever affected area we have.
Thank you.
Okay, I see that we have Andy. Go ahead and give us your question there, Andy.
To expand on what Bobby was saying, Oscar, for your question, during our short breaks on the Hurricane WatchNet, we'll do what we call a round robin. We'll start calling each other and see who has the best coverage on signals and what they're hearing and who they're hearing from. So that more or less decides who's going to be the operations manager or who should probably take over a net control position for us at that time, so we can spread the traffic and get traffic through and more or less be more expedient on getting the data that we collect to the National Hurricane Center and into FEMA. So we spread the wealth, so to speak, you know, and get it done as quickly as possible. All right. And we negotiate that throughout the night as propagation changes, and we sort of know when that's happening, you know. And I'm fortunate enough to have good antennas where I can talk to just about anybody at any time, from Minnesota down to Honduras and anywhere in between, things like that. Unfortunately, last year I had to use a satellite phone just to get into the Bahamas, you know, and couldn't make that call. It was dropping in and out and stuff. So there were certain things that we couldn't do. Like that, and finally we got some stations going and things like that, but we just hang around, you know, and we read those reports. We relay the information we get from the National Hurricane Center, the tropical updates and stuff, and when everybody can copy it and somebody's getting a little bit stronger, we sort of switch it off and everything. So, you know, we all play it together. We work as a big team, not just the operations person that's on with the net control station, but along with everybody, we all jump in and take over whenever necessary, whether on the schedule or not. I'll spend time just listening and do relays, even though I'm not on the schedule. So that's the way it works for us.
All right. Thank you very much, Andy. Is there anybody else? Look like Oscar's got his hand up again.
I got one in the chat if you want to do that first.
Let's get Oscar, then we'll go off the chat.
Okay.
Oh, I just want to say thank you, because here in the Caribbean we are exposed, and also Hawaii as well, and in the Caribbean, as Central America, we get a lot of hits all the time, and I know that also in the States. I mean, but definitely the National Hurricane Center is something that we watch when things are getting really hot. There are islands that they get really impacted really bad. Everybody has internet, but as everybody knows, once the internet is hurt, we can have a second hurricane coming like Irma and Maria afterwards within a week. And already in some islands that there were no internet or no even electricity. So definitely it is an old way in voice that we can get those important reports and probably even send emergency messages as well. Are you thinking that now? I do have a question. Are you thinking to have a section during that hour for digital modes to send the bulletin digital modes or receive information? Because you are actually active, like you have the Caribbean net and so on, and there are other nets that we work together when things are getting rough, and definitely when a hurricane hits, it's a real mess on communication. I mean, even the organizing things, we need all the help, and you give all the help necessary as well. But are you thinking to go into digital modes as well?
Okay, I missed the last part of the question. What type mode now?
Digital, going, for example, similar to WinLink or so on, or Factor or Vara or something that we can send messages, because this is becoming more and more important. The operator doesn't necessarily need to send a message, make a mistake, but if you receive a message from any agency and send it, it's important to send it as you got the message. I mean, without any personal input into it.
Sure. One thing I've been looking into and studying is ideas is using WinLink. I know a lot of folks have the capability of using WinLink. Some of the other digital modes, we've been staying away from that due in part that there's already another digital group with the VoIP net. They're linking in over the internet into 2 meter, 70 centimeter repeaters throughout the Caribbean. But of course, as you mentioned, if it's a bad enough storm when the internet goes down, VoIP net is down as well. So yeah, I've been looking into what we can possibly do there. Whether it's using the various modes. Of course, the beauty with WinLink, whether you're using PacTor, I think they've done away with WinMore. I forgot the name that they're using now that has taken that place. But we could be able to share data that way. I'm looking into that, and not only for weather data. I'm not sure how Saturn, or let me clarify, the Salvation Army Team Emergency Radio Network. One thing I didn't put in my program there is we're going to be working much closer with them. They will be having daily nets 3 times a week on 14.325. But when we do activate for the hurricane net for outgoing health and welfare traffic, that will be handled on 14.325 during the net. There will be some members with the Salvation Army Team net on board, And if they're not there, members of the hurricane net will take that traffic and forward on to them. So that can be handled that away. Still got some details to iron out on that and see how that goes. But we are looking at some other means of digital communications. However, right now, our primary method has been single sideband voice. And by the way, Oscar, good to meet you. I know I've talked to you on the air a few times during the nets, and seen you some of your reports over the years. So good to see you, and good to meet you. And hopefully, this will be a quiet year for you.
I don't want to push it, and even in the planning committee of this forum, we are thinking as also the agencies, because you scratched the tip of the iceberg when you mentioned the solar flare. We can get hit by a meteorite, or we can have a kind of ionosphere excitation to the point that we have no more ionosphere for HF communication. And that will disrupt actually also the satellites. So we're thinking to work as well in the 630 and 2200 meters bands, because they will have, in the worst case scenario, they will have a range about 600 miles. And this is something that is difficult. Even 1 watt or 5 watts is enough, because it's the effective radiated power, but you can reach 600 miles with that. This is something that we're looking forward how to prepare this kind of emergency training for everybody in case of a real bad ionosphere storm, because that would be a catastrophe across the nation itself.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, this one more, because these are follow-up comments here. So Andy, you go ahead, take it. Then we're going to go to the text for the chat stuff. Andy, go ahead.
Okay, to follow up on what Bobby and Oscar were talking about. Oscar, at the same time that I've got the Hurricane Watch Net on one frequency on 40 meters or 20 meters, I also am running Pactor 4 with the government, and I'm running ALE with shares. So I've got multiple things going on, and I'm passing three bits of traffic every which way we can, all right, supporting 2 different entities and the Hurricane Watch Net. So we've got multiple facets going like that. And I'm sure there's many of our net control stations and operations people that are also using WinLink, Vera now, but we're playing with that too. So I think there's a lot of us that are starting to use that now, and going to look forward to integrating that into the system here, and how we can use it and gain some knowledge on it and get that traffic out just a little bit faster to everybody.
Okay, Andy, thank you much. I'm sure accuracy has a lot to do with that also. Okay, Barry, let's take some from the chat, please.
There's one that I think is going to be very interesting to see what the answer to is. This is from Loretta and AJ6HO. How many hurricanes have actually crossed over Mexico and into the southwestern states? I know we can be affected by typhoons, but I think there's still hurricanes in the eastern Pacific. But has a hurricane ever crossed over to the eastern Pacific from the Atlantic? And also, has the hurricane ever come the other way from the eastern Pacific over Mexico and into the Atlantic?
That's easy to answer right off the bat. Funny you should ask. Going from the Eastern Pacific into the Atlantic, I can't think of one right offhand. I know it has, but the last one I know for a fact went from the Atlantic over into the Eastern Pacific was Hurricane Otto. I believe it was back in 2016, I think it was. Happened on Thanksgiving Day that year. And of all things, Otto hit the south end of Nicaragua, and was affecting Panama. I forget the name of the countries in between there. But that storm hit the southern tip of Nicaragua was a Category 3, traversed over and came out into the Eastern Pacific. And usually it changed names, but that storm that kept Otto when it got into the Eastern Pacific. But also that same day, while we were trying to work that the hurricane, there was a strong earthquake that hit on the opposite side, on the Eastern Pacific side of Nicaragua. We never did hear any reports on that of the earthquake, but if there were, at least we had manpower there to help out. So that was an interesting day. But yeah, we do know that I can safely say I know for sure one did go from the Atlantic into the Eastern Pacific. I know there's been others.
Okay. And the difference is, it was the international date line where it becomes a typhoon.
I would be
I know
lying if I
there's
said
a
yes or no.
demarcation line where it's a typhoon in the Western Pacific, but it's a hurricane in the Eastern Pacific.
Exactly.
Something like that.
And then you get on around Australia, they call them the Willy Willies.
Right. And that's all that was in the chat, Dan.
That's all in chat? Okay, do we open it up for comments here? Anybody got any comments? Andy, I'd like to ask you a question. What is your role in this? You sound like you're very involved.
My exact role in this, I'm just a net control station and ops if they need me for that. And then I pop in more often than not, running some extra hours, doing relays and things, because I can hear for some unknown reason. I don't know if it's my antennas or anything like that, because I just use wires. I put wires up in the air and that's what I do. I've done that for years and years in the military. And that's all we've always used is wires and learning how to do it. So the antenna is everything, lets me hear, lets me talk. And so I can hear things that the other stations can't hear, and I can reach out further with less power. There's very seldom. Last year, I think I used a KW twice like that to cover everything. And I was talking from Minnesota down to Honduras with no problems. But mostly it's the antenna and stuff. And I know I have those capabilities, so I stand by and I throw in a few extra minutes here and there and stuff like that. But that's what I do. I'm here to help alleviate problems and issues, help people. That's it.
Okay, it sounds like there's probably quite a few like you, and I think I'm sure that most of us all thank you for what you're doing. I have to say that antennas is also location. The two QTHs was best for me. Was one when I lived a block away from the ocean, and the other one I lived on top of Kennecott copper mine. In both cases, what would be a poor antenna worked super. So it sounds like you got a good thing going there, Andy. Okay.
There's a question about would SSTV ever be of any use to the net?
With slow scan TV, I'm not sure. That's a pretty good question. I'm not sure how we would integrate that. I think that would probably be something better done to, if you took a photo, it'd probably be best to be shipped as an attachment, so like on WinLink or something like that.
Okay, and I know the Hurricane Center doesn't have any ability to receive any SSTV stuff, but the Miami office, which is right across the hall from them, does. So if we had to, we could send it via the Miami NWS office, if you ever want to use it.
Yeah, I do know the Hurricane Center does have a WinLink address, but as far as setup to actually operate WinLink continuously, like they do some of the other modes, they're not set up for that.
They're available on a lot of the different networks and stuff, and constantly monitoring the shares frequencies that we use and from DHS NCC. So they're on a lot of different fixtures. And often, Bobby, I'll get a notification 6 hours before you send out an email. Be prepared to, go active. I'll get a notification from them for traffic handling and things like that. So sometimes they're wondering what Andy's doing because he's not answering right away. I'm busy on a keyboard also, so it gets tied up like that.
Yeah, no, you're like me. There's a lot of stuff that goes behind the scenes. A lot of folks just don't know about, and definitely appreciate everything you do. And you've been a great help since coming on board with us a few years ago.
All right, okay. Dan's got his hand up. Go ahead, little D. Dan, take it away.
Well, I just want to thank you, gentlemen, for the last 5 years, maybe, with the advent of DMR and interfaces to just monitor the traffic on the Hurricane WatchNet. I don't know that I've seen a more professional net system and traffic handling even than Army Mars was 30 years ago. So kudos to you. My hat's off.
Appreciate that. Thanks.
I've never seen Dan have a hat on, but the thoughts there anyway. Are there anything more? Is there anything more in the comments? Okay. Bobby, when we're done here, could you send me your presentation in the email? Just send it to me. I want to include it with documentations with the video we sent out.
Sure, I'll be able to do that. There's some of the slides I got there are sort of animated. There's sort of like different layers on it, so that may have to be edited. And or if you like, I can get that done for you and shoot it off to you tomorrow sometime.
That sounds good. I really appreciate that. I really appreciate you coming on board for this.
Sure, my pleasure. Anytime.
You know, I don't know what you sound like on Amtor or any of the other things, but on single sideband, your voice everybody knew who you were when you came on.
And his voice is trustful and he speaks the truth. So this is very important that people across the whole network, across the world, they know that when they hear your voice, you mean something important. So thank you, sir.
Thank you. Thank you.
And in the midst of hurricanes, I've never heard any of you sound excited. You can't pay extra for that in an amateur radio operator.
Oh, I don't know. Send me a
special breed.
Better than sitting on a dam in Puerto Rico, I'll tell you that.
Yes, Puerto Rico's had a lot of experiences that we've, thanks to Austria, we've got to share second and third hand. Some of them were able to help firsthand over there, but that's brought us a lot of things to the surface that most of us should have known a long time ago. We've had disasters forever. It seems like everything's new. We keep learning things new. That probably go on.
Oscar and me can tell stories on each other.
That would be a full 1 hour section, just the stories.
I think one of the things that helps us with the hurricane net, with our many of our net controls, is maybe not everybody, but the majority of us have at least been through one hurricane. Some of us been through maybe 2 or 3, maybe not as like a big Cat 3, Cat 4, but I've been through a number of them in my lifetime, and they're no fun. I've never lived one like y'all have that on Puerto Rico and the islands where there's nowhere to go, and it's a Cat 3 or bigger. But I did live through Camille in '69, went through Katrina in '05, and a bunch of even smaller ones in this area. And no, thank you. Hopefully, I have to never live through another one again.
Well, that's what we all hope.
Same way for tornadoes.
Yeah, but we have to be prepared. Okay.
Exactly.
Is there anything else in chat, Barry?
Nope, we're good.
Okay. Bobby, again, I really appreciate you doing this. This has been a great presentation, and we'll get everything out there. What we do is that this goes out, a copy of this video goes out to, to a couple thousand hands, and they forward on the other places. We also post it on YouTube nowadays, and everything's getting some pretty good hits. On the East Coast, this is a late period of time, so it's a lot more convenient for them to often watch the movies at their leisure and be a part of this. But we had pretty good turnout tonight. Okay, I'll shoot out there one more time. Is there any more comments? Questions, answers? Okay, this has been a good group tonight, and I appreciate you all showing up. And again, when I shut this down, you can check, you just log right back in like you got in here and chat amongst yourself if you want. And, that's what I leave it up for. I'll leave it up for the rest of the night. So 73s, everyone. It's been a pleasure. Take care.
73 is 12.
Good night, all. Thank you for coming.
Stay safe out there.